wanted to show how I do agar for growing mushrooms. One of my friends told me that he was interested in growing some mushrooms, so I just wanted to show some of the basics, and I'll talk about this stuff briefly. The first is working somewhere that's clean, so you want to keep your area clean that you're working on. I've recently started using this stuff just to clean countertops and things before I work. It says that it kills bacteria for up to a day. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but it seems to work pretty good. These $1 spray bottles from Walmart are pretty good for holding just some common cleaning stuff like bleach. The most common cleaner that I use is isopropyl alcohol. But last year, with COVID, we were kind of at a shortage, so I used a lot more bleach. But I guess the most important thing to remember is, especially if you're working inside of a still air box, try not to get your bleach and your alcohol mixed together, because you'll get some nasty gas that comes out of there. So anyways, now that you got a spot that you've cleaned off and you're wanting to work, here's some different containers that you can use. I'm showing these four together because these are my least favorite to use, but they are definitely still able to be used. These big Ziploc containers. So the reason I don't like them is simply due to the size. This is an old one with actually agar and some old mycelium in it, so it's just an old one. So you can tell I haven't taken the best of care of this one. But due to its size, that's the reason I don't like it. The bigger the container, the harder they are to store. But the pros of this is they hold up really well inside of a pressure cooker. So if you are doing no pour, where you pour your agar in this container and then you pressure cook it, you can stack like 2 or 3, probably just 2 in a small pressure cooker, and then maybe 2 more on the other side. Whereas with these smaller ones, like the glass ones I'll show, you can stack a lot more of those and get a lot more agar work done for every cook. When I was first starting out with agar, these were my go-to. These little plastic lids, that they fit the same jars as like a grain jar, same lid, So they're just handy because size-wise, they're shorter, so you can fit more in your pressure cooker. They're not quite as big around, but they still will do a good job. These Glad containers, size-wise, they're good. They're smaller than the big Ziplocs. The problem with these is, even though this is PP5, which is important to remember to make sure it's PP5, it's kind of flimsy plastic, and the pressure inside the pressure cooker a lot of times will cause these to implode and crush. The plastic, will still be okay, but it'll just be all disfigured when you pull it out. Now, you can drill a couple holes in here and cover it with tape, and that somewhat helps with the equalizing the pressure on the inside and the outside of the container, but it's just a lot more steps for these little Glad containers if you're going to do the type of agar pour where you're putting them inside your pressure cooker. Now, my dad he keeps bees, and so he has a lot of these containers, and you can see I've never used it for agar, but it used to have honey in it. And I was thinking that, a jar like that, if I was going to use something in this neighborhood starting out, I'd be more wanting to use a jar like this than this Glad plastic one. And then lastly, for this group, these are condiment cups. You can get these for super cheap. I use them mostly now because I mushroom hunt, and I keep a little agar in there, and I take, you can tell that one's actually bacterial. There's some bacteria down there, but that's a clone from a tissue sample of a wild oyster mushroom that I found out in the woods. So I hope to clean it up and maybe grow some mushrooms based on a tissue sample of one I found in the wild. But anyways, these condiment cups are super cheap. You can get 250 of these for like $10 to $20, but they will not go in a pressure cooker. They will just crush and not work. So with these types of agar containers, you have to sterilize the whole jar of agar separately, and then pour these inside your still air box or in front of a flow unit. So anyways, these are one of my favorites of this neighborhood, just because size-wise they're super short. I'll try to get closer to show so you can stack 2 of these for every one of those, and you know, these are handy little cups when you're starting out. But now I want to talk about my favorite containers to use, which are these glass petri dishes. And I have been able to find these for about $2 a piece. So each one is about $2 a piece. I've seen some Pyrex that are very nice looking, but they're very expensive. So if you go on Amazon and you look around, you can find these glass petri dishes, which are reusable. You can put them in the pressure cooker with no problems. You can find them for as low as between $1 and $2 a piece. And these are my go-to now. Ones that I didn't mention are the dishes that are just like this, but they're made out of plastic. But you can't ever put them in the pressure cooker, so you have to throw them away after every use. And I did use a lot of those, but I tried to get away from throwing away so much plastic. So I started moving to the glass, and I'm going to show these with the agar pour I'm going to do today. Here's an older transfer that I made, just to show that I am growing mushrooms in them. So on to the next thing, your agar recipe. I'm going to show some of the agar stuff here, and you know, you need a scale because you got to measure it out. I do suggest maybe getting, this is a cheap $9 scale. It works, but I don't like it. But it's just up to you. So the first ingredient for agar is you want to add water. Now you can use tap water. I'm lazy, and 16.9 fluid ounces, which is your pretty common sized drinking water cup that you get, or drinking water bottle from the grocery store, is 500 milliliters. So that's the first part of your recipe, is 500 milliliters. Conveniently, the water in that is exactly that, so I use that quite a bit. Well, we'll talk about the tape at the end of the recipe, so I'll put that aside. Agar powder, you don't need all 3 of these types. These are just 3 different types that I've gotten. One second, I gotta adjust my pressure cooker. Okay. Sorry if the pressure cooker is loud in the background. If I'm working on stuff, I always have the pressure cooker running, so it's inevitable. So anyways, agar powder, $10 to $20. You can find it on Amazon. There's nothing special about these that I'm showing. You can get pre-mixed, where it comes with nutrients mixed into the agar, specially designed for mushrooms, but I like to mix the nutrients myself. So here's the nutrients. This is malt extract, light malt extract. I've experimented with some different stuff. I also brew beer, so I've been kind of experimenting with some different nutrients to add to the agar, because agar itself doesn't really have a lot of nutrients. So a lot of times you add some form of nutrients for the agar plates in the form of light malt extract. People, you know, you can use potatoes and make dextrose, potato dextrose. There's a lot of different nutrients that you can add. You also don't even have to add nutrients. A lot of times if you have a dirty agar plate, so say that you had this was loaded with contamination, or this one, actually this clone that I took from the wild, this is a good example because undoubtedly this was going to have contamination in it. So to slow down the contamination and focus on being able to see more clearly the mycelium, all that is water and agar. There's no nutrients in that at all, and that's just called water agar. Another option is grain water, and this is my least favorite. I hate grain water. Instead of using regular water and mixing it with agar and malt, you can use grain water, and you get grain water when you make your grain jars. So that, in another video, I might show how to make these grain jars, and this is wild bird seed. But basically, you hydrate your grains before you add mycelium to it, and the water that's left over after you hydrate your grains is left in this. You can save it and use it as nutrients for your agar plates. The reason I don't like it is because I have no idea how much nutrients is in there. If I add 5 grams of this, I know I have 5 grams of nutrients. So the next time, if I want to adjust my my recipe, it's easy to do so. But you have no idea how many nutrients you're adding to your agar. And lastly, this isn't even really necessary, but I like to add some food coloring to my agar plates just to spice it up and make it cool. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and show how agar is made now. Let's see if I can prop this phone up in a way. Okay, so I've already taken the water and I got it heating up in a pot over on the stove, and when we get there I'll show that. So my recipe is 10 grams of agar. And I like to wait till that water is heating up, because what you'll find when you dump the agar into the 500 milliliters of water is that it has a tendency to clump up and not want to break apart, and that can be kind of a pain. It's not a big deal, but it just makes the stirring part easier. So we have 10 grams of that. Let me make sure I have something to stir it with. Okay, and so now we're going to add this to the 500 milliliters of water. So here I have my water's just about to boil. I'm going to increase the temperature so it gets a little bit hotter than it is right now. Well, my phone died, and this is part 2 of the agar video. So it's actually a little bit too hot, and I'm losing a lot of water. So I'm turning it down just a bit. It doesn't need to be this hot. So there we go. That's about how I like to do it. And now we're going to add the agar, and I like to add it in a way that it doesn't all land in the same place. So I'm not a film specialist, so this is not my best work trying to hold the phone and make the video at the same time. So we've added our 10 grams of agar, and it's clumpy because I didn't pour it very well. So we're going to break it up. I like to use a butter knife. You can also use a whisk, but usually I don't need to because I don't make it this clumpy. I might have to actually give it a little bit hotter. Because I poured way too fast. But that's what happens when you try to make a video, I guess. While that's heating up, we can go ahead and measure out the nutrients. So I'm going to set the phone back up over here. Now I'm doing light malt nutrients, and I'm kind of going to go with the lower nutrient amount than normal, because the last time I had higher, so I'm going from 7 grams, and this time I'm going to try to do 5 grams. You can use a spoon, but I've gotten used to just dumping it out. I use these mason jars for everything. So I have my nutrients, and we're going to come over here and add that. This doesn't clump quite as much as the Agar does. So that's Agar heating up, and I'm going to get my stir. I'm looking for big chunks of agar that are clumped together. Usually I don't have this happen, but it happens. I'm sure it'll happen to you if it's, at some point. But pouring it slowly into the water makes a huge difference. You can spend an extra 10 seconds pouring it slow, or spend a lot more time doing what I'm doing right now. Okay, I'm going to turn it down a little bit so it's not so frothy. I guess I can go ahead and add my food coloring. I usually just go with a couple drops until it's the color that I like. Probably a little bit too much, but it doesn't hurt. Still seeing a couple chunks in there. Well, I'm going to take a pause from the video and get all these chunks out and clean this up, and then we'll move on to part 3. So we'll be back in a bit. Okay, so we have our agar here. We got as much lumps out as I want to, and now we're going to go on to pouring the dishes. So you just pour a little bit in the bottom, set it over there, and you can put the lid on. These are going to get condensation on them anyways, because they're going to be going in the pressure cooker when we're done with this. I'm going to go ahead and leave the lids off so they can harden up a little bit faster. So let me see what you're seeing. There are better jars than the one that I am using for this. You just get used to doing it a certain way, and that's how you keep doing it. You just fill all the plates. And you don't fill them all the way to the top. You just get a small amount down at the bottom. I'm going to set these over behind the camera because I'm running out of space. You're just making sure that you have enough agar in each plate to completely cover the bottom of the dish. They really don't take very long to set up either, just a few minutes, and it'll go from being a liquid to a gel. So you don't want to let your agar, you know, when it's hot like this, you don't want to just let it sit and forget about it. You want to make sure that to pour these while they're still kind of hot. A mistake I made when buying these plates is I got different size plates based on, you know, which size had the best deal. So I have plates that range in size from 70 millimeters in diameter to 90 millimeters, and sometimes it can be kind of hard to see which lid goes with which plate. But I found that standard recipe is enough to make about 20 of the plates that I have. So just enough to finish this last plate. And then we're going to let them set and cool down a little bit. And, well, we don't even really have to. We can start putting the lids back on right now. This is where I got to figure out which lid goes with which plate. So, anyways, we will be back with the next part of agar in a bit. So, this was how to pour them into the little petri dishes. Okay, last video for the no pour tech for these agar. So I split this into a pile of 10 of my plates. Because I showed this as no pour, meaning that I'm going to have to sterilize all these plates. We poured them all out on this table in the open air. That means if we were to let these dry and wait 2 weeks or a week, almost every one of them would be contaminated. So what we have to do is sterilize them. Now the alternative to this, and it's what I do every time is I do pour, I pour these inside of a still air box. So instead of pouring these out on this countertop and then sterilizing them in the pressure cooker and using all this aluminum foil, I would simply take these glasses and I would turn them inside out, because I don't care how they sit in the pressure cooker. I would sterilize the glass, bring it into my still air box, and pour it inside of there. But for the sake of this video, this is the more elementary, easy, in my opinion, way to do it. It's just not as efficient. What I do is I wrap my plates up in foil, like this, sort of like you're wrapping a Christmas present, I guess. And I turn the bottom ends up. The reason being is I don't want all that water that they're going to be sitting in to get all up in the petri dishes. So, anyways, then you got a little box of 10, and that should fit nicely in your pressure cooker. You want to cook these for 15 to 20 minutes at 15 psi. It doesn't need to be in there for an hour or 40 minutes. If you can actually overdo it, where you overcook the solution to an extent where you make it not as good for mushrooms to spread and mycelium to thrive in these petri dishes. But that's pretty much it. All we do after this is we set this in the pressure cooker and cook it, let it cool down, take it out, and then I will carefully unwrap this aluminum foil and then do the rest of my petri dishes in the same foil, so I'm not using a big sheet every time I do this. But again, next time I can show Pour Tech, where you pour it inside of a still air box and you don't have to do all this sterilization with all the different plates. But anyways, that's how I make my agar plates. I hope you found it helpful, and if you got any tips or suggestions, you can leave it in the comments. Thank you.